Well, now we're going to talk about easily one of the most powerful expressions, control structures, however we want to put it, in the C programming language. And that's called the switch or switch case. Because switch and case, and also default, are keywords in this item, but mostly it's called the switch case. And what happens is that we switch on an expression. Now this expression has to have an integer result. You can't switch on a string, you can't switch on a float, anything like that. This has to be an integer value in switch expression. Down here we will have the word case, that's a reserved word, another constant expression, because this is not being evaluated, this is actually being compared inside the assembly language that will be produced. So we have a constant expression, and then a colon, and then a statement or statement block, surrounded by braces, as we know, to be executed if this constant expression matches the original integer expression up there. We are actually comparing these two. Now the neat thing in a switch is that we can have a whole list of these, whole list of cases, and we will actually create the same kind of form that we had with the else if that we just took a look at, but this is a much cleaner way to do it, and it's much easier to maintain. And then there is a default colon statement at the end, which is optional. You don't have to have a default. If you don't, execution will run through these case constants and then fall out the end. But if you want to do something at the end, like our else we had before, then you need a default statement. Let's take a look at the two side by side, switch and else if. Here's our else if that we just took a look at in the last video. Remember, if not string compare, buffer, and the slash question mark that we used, if that was true, this comparison, we would print they want help. Else if, and so on, slash A and slash B, and then here's our default of none of the above, we would print an unknown option. Well, here's how we do it in a switch. We switch on buffer sub 1. Remember, buffer sub 0 has this slash in it, and buffer sub 1, the next character over, has this question mark or an A or a B or something we don't know. So we are going to switch on just the one character and skip over the slash. If, that's how you read this, if this, in case, this buffer 1 is a question mark, in case buffer 1 is a question mark, printf, they want help. Just like we did here. And then we break. We have to have this break statement in here because these cases will fall through if we don't. If we don't do that break, this would occur. We'd skip right over these two values because they're just labels. Notice the colon, that signifies a label. They're just labels of the switch. And it would fall in and it would print option A, and then it would fall in and it would print option B. So we need to have that break word in there. If this question mark does not match our expression, notice that's a literal, single quotes around it. If this literal constant value right here does not match that, we'll go to the next one. And we'll look here, in case this buffer 1 is a capital A, or in case buffer 1 is a lowercase a, do this, print option A. Now we didn't have that functionality only over here. We only could look at uppercase A and B because we didn't do any conversions or anything, any lower string work or anything like that to convert these. So switch gives us a little more functionality in just one more little line of code that doesn't really produce much of anything in the compiler other than an extra comparison. So here we have a case uppercase A or case lowercase a. If that one hits, it'll fall through that one. And if that one doesn't hit, it'll catch this one and we'll print option A. And then we break. Same thing down here. Case uppercase B or lower B, we'll print option B, and then we'll break. Remember, you got to have the break so that you can get out of here and not fall through. If we don't hit A or B, we'll hit the default label down here, which says unknown option. just the way we had our default else, none of the above over here. All right, so that's what this structure looks like. Let's go take a look at it in code, and I have it over here in switch.c, and you can check out the DVD or the online, and this code and the other code that we've looked at will be available to you in case you don't want to type it in. I recommend you type it in, but in case you don't really want to, you can pick it up from here, and these are such valuable programs. I don't know that you're going to gain all that much, but you should really type them in and suffer through it yourself. So here we have our standard IO include. Here's our good old main. You're going to return an int. It's going to take an argument count and our argument vector, which we remember is an array of pointers to the argument strings that come in from the command line. Little automatic character buffer, 10 bytes long. If the argument count is less than 2, they didn't put anything on the command line, and we tell them we need an option so we don't blow up, and we leave with a bad exit code, exit 1. If they did everything the way they were supposed to as a good user, we come down here to string end copy, and we copy up to 9 characters from the argument v, from the first argument v. Remember, argv sub 0 will be the name of the program itself, but we will copy this from our option that they give us into the buffer. And now that we have that, we will switch, just the way we looked at our code. Let me move it up for you here. We will switch on number 1 character. The first character is in element 0, buffer sub 0. And I know we haven't talked about arrays yet, but if you're somewhat of a programmer, you already understand zero-based indexing. So we have buffer sub 0 and buffer sub 1. The 0 is going to be the slash. We're going to skip over that. And here's our case that we just looked at. Case question mark, break, A's, break, B's, break, default. End of the switch. We have braces here to enclose all the code of the switch. And this is the end of main. This is our brace down here that matches up with the end of main. Everything makes sense? Remember that you could have braces in here and encapsulate a number of statements. It could be controlled by this particular case label. All right, so let's go take a look at it run. We'll go to our command prompt and we'll compile it. I called it switch.c. There's our compiler, and it created our object code, linked it together, and we have switch.exe, which will run with no parameters. Usage, we need an option. So that hit argc less than 2. Usage, we need an option. We're not at that test phase yet. So now we need to switch on our first possibility, which is lower A. That's option A. Switch on our next in the test suite. Option A also functions. B, yep. B, yep. What happens if we do C? Unknown option, exactly the way it should be. And any other characters in there, we don't care. We see them as an unknown option. And notice a little bit of a side effect here. If we start our gibberish with a good character, that /B. Remember, we're only looking at the valid first character there after the slash. So this will match as option B, even though there's a bunch of junk there that we never look at and don't care about. So we have to decide and talk to the program managers, is that acceptable for them to put that garbage out there? Or should we tell them, no, you can't do this? And then that adds more code, and that's how we make a living. So that's the switch statement as compared to the else if that we looked at in the previous video. And now you know how to make a switch. And I'm going to have you cut your own switch here pretty quickly as we give you some programming assignments and some homework to do.